Welcome everyone to the webinar. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Shay from eCreators. Appreciate everyone coming along. We hope that you're working safely from home and doing well during this time. Today, we're going to explore new ways to adapt using new online resources. And for this pandemic, we are so glad to see over 100 organizations have signed up already for this webinar, and from a small to large enterprises. I can see a wide range of industry from education, training, private businesses, government sectors, and all others as well. And you guys might be looking for new tools or new ways to adapt a normal way to work. If you are from other industry, please let us know, and we will do our best to cover every base there is. I just gonna go through a quick housekeeping rules for the sessions. We are using YouTube Premiere today for sessions. I believe everyone is quite familiar with YouTube already. So on the right-hand side, you'll be able to see that you can interact with our panelists today. Please get in, ask any questions. We will do our best to answer them. And if we can't, we'll make sure that we answer them on the chat or send you an email after this. Now, before I get started, I would like to introduce you to our EdTech experts today. So the first we have is Dean Saunders, our CEO and founders from eCreators. The second one, we have Craig Smith, who is the National Coordinator, Technology Management and Resourcing from Positive Partnership. And lastly, we have Liam Liddycoat, who is our Commercial Services Manager at eCreators as well. I'll be moderating all the chats, and if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask. Enjoy the discussion today, and now I'm going to pass it on to Liam.
And thanks, Shay. And we have collated a lot of questions. We speak to so many customers so frequently as well, and since the pandemic really kicked off in Australia around March, we're speaking daily with people about how they're adjusting and adapting. So looking forward to having this chat today and sharing some of that experience and how we at eCreators have adapted, and also how positive partnerships have shifted to the change, which is a really good story as well. And we'll provide some examples, and we'll go into some of the questions that you've submitted prior to this webinar. And like Shay said, we'll be monitoring in the chat as well. So I'll probably throw it out to you, Dean, first. From all the folks that you've been speaking to and all the staff that you have as well, what have been the current mindset changes that you saw around March, April, and the challenges that you faced coming into a total work from home situation?
Yeah, well, we're sort of, I guess, one of those organisations that's fortunate to have a bit of a view or an insight into sort of what's happening globally. I mean, we're talking to people as far away as Egypt, as far away as South America, as far north as London, Saudi Arabia, and of course their own backyard. So I think what we first saw when coronavirus sort of broke in its very early sort of stages, it was a very reactive thing, and some people were very complacent in their reactions, thinking, how long is this thing going to last? Is it something that's going to stick around? Will I need to, even myself as a business owner, will I need to send my staff home? When do we actually make a call on that? So a lot of people were reactive, many were complacent, and now obviously moved forward a few months, and everyone's becoming very adaptive to the new ways to work. So, we're getting used to our routines, what time we wake up. I mean, I have to admit, I probably wasn't the perfect poster child for working from home straight away on such a full-time basis. I may have slept in a little bit here and there, and perhaps worked a little bit later at night. And obviously, over time, you sort of go that balance as to what is the new working day. And that differs for a lot of people. I think people are now at a stage that there is definitely a high degree of uncertainty still as we move forward with this thing. But people are, as humans, I mean, we are fairly adaptable, and I think we are sort of adapting to this new way of life. In saying that too, I think furthermore, people looking at this as an opportunity to really sort of, assess their businesses. How do we function? What are the vital things in our business? If you were to get a whiteboard out and actually draw on the whiteboard, what are the things that we need to get by? We've somewhat come from the land of plenty, if you like, where we had access to everything and good pools of resources, be it people or technology or otherwise. What do we need to actually run an optimal organisation, both for now and looking into the unknown future?
Yes, thanks, Dean. And there's something that you mentioned there about that balance, and I think what people are trying to find is not only the work-life balance, but the different type of work balance that we were used to juggling in the workplace. How much time do we spend on learning, and what does learning look like when you're in the workplace? And Craig, your story or positive partnership story for when the pandemic first hit is amazing in terms of the uptick in the usage. But perhaps first give people the elevator pitch about positive partnerships and then how things changed for you when COVID-19 hit.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Liam. I totally agree with everything that Dean just said then, and it's certainly been a big year for absolutely everybody. I think we are an organisation so we're called Positive Partnerships, and we run autism education workshops around the country. So we run workshops for families, we run workshops for parents and carers, educators in every state, and our bread and butter has always been face-to-face workshops. So we have a fairly strong team of workshop facilitators. They're all school teachers and come from an autism education background. And so every other week we've got people, well, we used to have people flying different states, different small towns, hitting up parts of regional Australia, places that don't always get a lot of workshops coming through. And so it really, really was for us these full-day, multi-day workshops where we'd all sit in the same room together and sort of hash out strategies and supports to help kids on the autism spectrum. And so that was something that we used to support online in a bit of we'd have online resources that would be a bit of extra support, the main thrust was face-to-face workshops, and then we'd say, if you want to learn more, jump on and do an online module. And then this year when things all changed and we realized that we wouldn't be able to keep running face-to-face workshops or flying in the way that our staff used to travel, we thought we've really got to work out something here, and have a pivot to, pivot's been the word of the year, but just move towards something that's going to keep the relationships going with our schools, our parents and carers across the country, keep them feeling supported, that we haven't just dropped out, that we haven't just said, well, we can't support you face to face, so you'll have to find other answers. But we know people are more than ever needing this, particularly with schools closing down. For us in an education capacity, we knew there was a whole array of these kids who were suddenly out of routine, and for kids on the autism spectrum, that's a fairly significant challenge. So that's what led us to think, where to from here, and that's where we ended up getting into a few changes and a few other ways of working that has now made this year something completely different that we never expected.
And what was the uptick like in the learning management system when it first hit? I know we've had a chat before about that it rocketed, but what sort of numbers were you looking at when it first came around?
Oh, absolutely. Like I mentioned, we used to have online modules that we would offer as an extra resource, particularly if you couldn't be at the workshop, perhaps you'd log on and do the module. And so we had a portfolio of modules, and complementing that, we'd also have, say, one webinar a month that we'd run. So we'd run a webinar a month, we'd have these online modules to support if you couldn't be there face to face. And say the average month we'd get, say 1,200 people do the modules across the month. Like that would be a very healthy month for us. And a webinar, say we get 50 people, on a webinar once a month. And then I just remember this once, because our pivot was face-to-face workshops are closed. We're not doing face-to-face workshops. We are going to expand the number of webinars we're doing. We're going to expand the online learning opportunities within our LearnBook platform. We're going to have digital classrooms where teachers can work together in ways that replicate the sort of stuff they'd be doing in workshops, but they're doing it inside what we call a digital classroom. And so we thought we'll do that, and we'll run webinars 3 times a week instead of once a month, which was a huge, huge change, and you can imagine a lot of content being made, content relevant to the time, content about how do you adapt to the changing education space at the moment, kids working from home, etc. And so that user number based from, say, 1,000 a month who were doing our modules on the first day of term 2, and this was after schools had all, in New South Wales and Victoria at least, had sort of shut down, and the school holidays had happened, and then no one's quite knowing what's going to happen. First day back, staff couldn't go to school, so they had to do staff development elsewhere. And we like, I can remember by 10 o'clock the first morning, we'd had well over like 1,000 to 2,000 people on that day, like just the one day. We'd hit what we'd otherwise see across a month was happening in one day. And our webinars that we're seeing 50 people a month, we were getting 250 to 300 per session across the 3 that we were running each week. So those numbers show that there were people out there who were eager for professional development, for training, for support, teachers who wanted guidance, parents and support, carers who wanted to maintain a connection, to ask questions, to get insights. And that didn't go away because the face-to-face workshops couldn't keep going. What it did was it actually tapped into people who might not have been aware of those face-to-face workshops or couldn't get to those workshops. And suddenly it made a space where they could all come and join together on our online platforms. And
something that we're all sort of facing is that Zoom fatigue, and Zoom fatigue is one of these new catchphrases that has come about with COVID. We should play a game of COVID catchphrase. We've got pivot already. I'm sure someone will bring up the new normal and Zoom fatigue, but keeping things fresh and interesting, and little simple things like, let's shut down your inbox for a second while you're on this. I'm sure people that are on this webinar now are checking emails while they're listening to this and only absorbing some of it, and just finding ways to keep it really fresh and interesting. And I guess that's one of the areas of your, or one of your strengths, Dean, is the motivation and keeping things light and fun in the workplace as well. How, a bit easier when you can organise a pizza day in the office. How have you gone about motivating your team and keeping everyone engaged and enjoying their work whilst we're all working remotely?
Yeah, a lot of it's thinking about balance. I mean, you remember me, I think, walking around the office, Liam, back in the day, where, I'm pretty interactive. I like to sort of go up and sit with everybody at some stage and, ask them about what they're doing and, see some of the great work that they're participating in, the good stuff they're doing for our customers. So for me, it was really hard to lose that human connection. I think for a lot of people, a lot of managers, a lot of colleagues, whether they be subordinate or your manager or whichever, have really struggled with that. When this thing first started, I think, they were calling it like, the Introvert's Paradise, Oh, fantastic. I don't need to go to the office and have confrontation anymore or talk to people I don't want to. I can hide away in my little corner and do my own thing. But I think now, even the introverts are feeling it. So, it's a case of not loving too little, but not loving too much, I guess, and then making it a mix of activities where, even these types of forums on Zoom and the like, they can become, really confrontational too. It's a one person sitting at a microphone. A lot of the time you're looking at yourself and concentrating on that instead of your background or whatever it might be. So, making sure that you do mix up those modes of communication, I think is the first one. So sometimes it can just be a hangout or a hip chat, or it can be a phone call instead of one of these, for example. Like, with all due respect to everybody I speak to on webinars and all the rest, sometimes it's just as good to have that phone call, to get to the point, and get it all done. Then from a cultural perspective, that's the tough bit again, because it's a real mix. And I mean, even when you compare it to things that we're doing in the office. I mean, for Pizza Day, who doesn't love Pizza Day? Everybody loves pizza or salad or whatever they decide. But some people might not like going to the driving range to hit golf balls together one night after work. They're different types of activities. So with the activities that we have chosen, we've made them as neutral as they can be. So we've done some fun things, which are personal things like the baby photo exercise. So everybody send in a baby photo, and we have to guess whose photo it is. Online categories. I didn't get to go to categories, but here it was a lot of fun. Draw the picture or say the word. You've got 10 seconds to match the word up, and then doing other little things like Pyjama Day. So with Pyjama Day, we sent out 30 pairs of pajamas to staff members to sit on the camera, so we could all, as a team, it's like a football team or a cricket team, if you like, getting together with the same uniform on. So it felt good to be together, even though it was virtually. I think the real pajamas made it that little bit more. And I think receiving something from work too provides that sort of sense of unity. I mean, the pajamas were about $8 a pair from Kmart. They weren't expensive, but it was the meaning behind the exercise which really made the difference. You can go on and on to some of the other things that we have done, but it's also important to keep up those normal things you would do, like if it's somebody's work anniversary or somebody's gone above and beyond to do something. So making sure they're recognised for those additional pieces of effort, and that effort's relayed to everybody else in the company too. Certainly continues along that path of ongoing encouragement and ongoing engagement with your team out there. And then obviously letting them know things to places where they can find help. So if they're feeling down, if they are, I mean, no one's been isolated for this long and worked from home for this long, and certainly in our world. So it's making sure that they have those appropriate support networks in place too. So if they do need a chat or they don't feel comfortable chatting with someone else, they can do that. And then there's also, obviously other things that we offer, such as, financial help where it's needed as well too. So it is a real mix. So it can't be too much, because then it becomes like, oh God, what does he want this time? Compared to, this is a part of the norm, and this is here to support me in my cultural and well-being.
That's a good point as well, setting those expectations early, and we use our learning management system, LearnBook, as well for a lot of those meetings, and also to distribute some content on mental health as well. And I remember those pajamas for Pyjama Day. I'd come out wearing them, and my kids think I look like Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka. That was the description of them. So I'll pull them out from time to time as well. Craig, when you've got a lot of facilitators who have been traveling around the country and they might enjoy that travel and meeting all these new people as well, how have you kept that team motivated and engaged when they don't have that interaction with direct interaction with their students? How have you kept them engaged and firing on all cylinders?
Yeah, it's a good question, because our team, I mean, I certainly fit into what Dean just mentioned about the Introvert's Paradise. This sort of lifestyle suits me very well. I could shut the doors and not go outside again for some time and be really content. But our team are very relationship-driven people. They feed off the energy that other people give them in the room, and they're the sort of presenters who want to be around other people all the time, and making that part of their work and their lifestyle. So for them to be working remotely in this time and have to transition to webinars, instead of being at tables and generating content for digital classrooms, it has proven a challenge. We've got two internal teams that run. One is called the COPS team, and that stands for Communities of Practice, and that's a community of practice in terms of how do you keep people together and feeling like they're part of a group, So they run little activities and games across the week, similar to what Dean mentioned, like categories and things. We'll do quizzes, trivia, They'll ask for, it might be little sort of hunts where you've got to find a photo from your house that represents something, or you've got to, you know, share a memory of something. So we have, and I mean, that's got to be regulated so that there's that engagement and that sharing, but you're not getting a flood of emails that you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's Monday morning and suddenly I've got 60 questions of trivia coming through, you know? It's a balance that we set times during the week where we say, well, it's Friday afternoon, we're going to all do a bit of a game together, you know? Or it's Tuesday morning, let's share a memory. We've also got another group who are called the Happiness Hackers, and they run yoga and meditation and more sort of mindfulness practices across the week as well. So they'll schedule in like a Wednesday morning session where they'll use Zoom and they'll run a bit of a yoga session for people to engage in as well. So I guess we've got that two sides of the cops do a lot of the fun interactive game, keep people connected and talking, and then you've got the happiness hackers who focus a bit more on the mental health sort of side of things. And we find that when that balances across the week, it actually does really support those people who otherwise get that energy from being around others and flying around the country and doing workshops. They get to talk and chat and have a laugh, you know, with colleagues, which just keeps things moving nicely across the week.
And that's, they sound like fantastic initiatives, and it sounds like it also caters for those who are introverts as opposed to extroverts as well, and allows them to participate as much as they want to.
Yeah.
And I guess changing pace, and one for you, Dean, as a business owner, you've been running this business for over 13 years now, and it was born out of a global financial crisis. We've now, well, about 20 weeks in of working from home full time. Your priorities now are probably very different to what they were 20 weeks ago. Given that Melbourne's now in probably the third week of a really strict lockdown, there's curfews imposed, but the rest of the country is starting to make their way out of it. What are your priorities as a business owner, and what do you think other business owners should be focusing on right now, depending on where they are in Australia or around the world, depending on their restrictions?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question and an interesting sort of conclusion you draw there too. I think the direction our company goes in, probably we take a step back. When this thing started, we essentially were in the right position. I mean, this is what we do. We provide remote education. We provide content that sits in our platforms to feed people remotely, no matter where they are in the world or locally or internally. So we were pretty well geared up for it. Were we geared up for remote work? Probably not as much as I would have liked to have thought. You know, I think this forced a hand a little bit. You know, there's always, I think a lot of managers would share the same sentiments about remote work. You know, are you going to get the same amount of productivity done if everybody's working from home? And I always had my fears about that, whether or not that would happen. It comes down to that matter of trust. You know, can you trust everybody in your team from A to Z that everyone's going to go home, do their work, our customers are going to be happy, quality isn't going to drop off, productivity is maintained, all those sorts of things. In short, with us, the answer has been yes. Everyone's done a remarkable job. So from a strategic point of view, it doesn't really affect our strategic plan as far as the development of our products go per se. There's a few tweaks there that we'll make to them, but it does affect the way that we obviously interact with our customers, the way we interact with each other, and what our plans might be for coming back after this, or in a decreased version of this, whatever one sort of takes place. But certainly, we've certainly proven that we can be incredibly responsive, just as, if not more responsive, as a remote working organisation, just as we can as an office-bound one. I mean, we look at companies like Atlassian, for example, have made the call. That's it. Everybody now works from home. They've got thousands of employees. even the Facebooks and the Googles have gone and made these massive, huge campuses and global head offices. They sit largely abandoned at the moment because everybody's gone home with their families, and it's working well. I think for the most part. I haven't to date heard of any remote workforces, those that are geared up to be remote workforces, that have had terrible experiences just yet. I mean, I'm sure there's some shiny examples out there. I'm sure there's some people that'll absolutely put their hand up and say, hey, it hasn't worked here. Yeah, and you obviously have to hear those stories. But getting back to your question, so yeah, what sort of things will we change? I mean, from a product perspective, things need to become more social. We've seen a massive increase in utilization of our platform. So we've been in a position where we've been able to help a lot of organizations who've lent back us and said, look, we really want to keep your platform, but we can't afford it at the moment. What can we do? So we've suspended all payments for, in some cases, 6 months, in some cases, 12 months for different clients. In saying that too, we've seen that incredible spike in concurrent users using our platforms. And we've also observed all these new wonderful things they're doing with the platforms that they were never doing before. They're using them as communication tools, for example. So collaborative tools, using forums and blogs and wikis to do a lot of that communication, to ask questions and seek answers, provide answers, provide links to information to each other. That's amazing whenever you create something and you throw it out to an audience. The audience will always find new amazing ways of doing things with it, which were perhaps never intended, but do come about. But what I think we'll be definitely focusing on, and certainly are already focusing on, is bringing more of that social activity to the platform as well. I've spoken before about all of the things that surround learning, and Craig touched on a good moment before when he mentioned about the facilitators needing that feedback from the audience. These are things that are really important to learning and good learning outcomes. So how do we manufacture those types of experiences in an online world? Because it can't just be Zoom like this forever. I'll go crazy, you'll go crazy, everybody will go crazy. So we need to figure out ways to keep culture up and alive, to keep conversations going, to break into little separate groups, which is just about our topic, and keep those conversations ongoing and alive. So we've got a few things in the workshop, and certainly I'll provide a few links to some of those things that we're doing as well too, so you can play around with some of the social things that we're doing in the learning space too.
Yeah, and you're right with, and what I found with customers using it a little bit differently, that it is a learning management system can be one of the only platforms where everyone has access to it, and they didn't consider using a messaging tool in there or a virtual classroom tool for meetings as well. And chatting to folks in Perth, some of their workplaces have forgotten that they were even working from home, and they've haven't reconsidered their flexible working policy at all. It's just back to business as usual. So I guess that's the such a big country with different states and different stages have businesses looking at different priorities. And Craig, with Positive Partnerships making such a great quick change to that blended learning model, now that you're well into the rhythm of that, what's next? Are you planning on continuing it like that? Are there any plans to move back to face-to-face? What are the future priorities or current priorities for Positive Partnerships?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we definitely are not going to let go of all the great things that we've learned and built on in this time. I think we will absolutely return to face-to-face workshops when it's safe and suitable to do so, but we'll do that with even further complement to all the online innovations we've been able to build on this year. I think we're really interested in seeing how to make things further interactive and further sociable, like Dean just said too. Like we want to make sure that we've got, for example, we're running virtual workshops with schools where we try to simulate what we would otherwise do out the front of the classroom And in some situations, we've had some schools from other states who have been able to get together, even if we haven't been able to join them. They've been able to be in a school, for example, where they've been in, say a hall, and they're socially distanced at their tables. And so we've had situations where some of those tables have had their own laptops. So we've been able to actually have a Zoom room, or like a tiled sort of space full of people talking and sharing answers in a way that you would do when you sort of walk around tables and get feedback from people and have a chat. But we want to find increasing ways to have that social experience as part of these sorts of spaces. And like you said, a platform like LearnBook for us gives us these digital classroom spaces. And just to expand a bit more on what that means, I mean, we've got, I guess, pre this period, we're using LearnBook to host online modules. So people would go on, do the modules, do a quiz, get a certificate, and they were sort of on their way after that. Whereas now we've got these classrooms that we build for schools, and the school has all the teachers enrolled in that space, and they can do online modules, but they've also got a lot of interactive forums. They've got message boards where they can all share best practice examples amongst each other. And so we're, I guess, further tapping into that space of getting people to, to share their best practice and to make that part of things. So we're, I guess, the next couple of months for us is if face-to-face workshops, still are off the table, how do we run virtual workshops? How do we run webinars being complemented with LearnBook that are increasingly collaborative and interactive with as many people as possible?
Yeah, it's actually an interesting one you raised there, Craig, too. I mean, someone threw an idea at me the other day, or it might have been I was reading an article somewhere, saying, is the website dead? When people search for you, should they be finding your community versus your website with about us and who we are and all the rest of it too? So yeah, maybe we're seeing a bit of an evolutionary step there as well.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah.
It's that social proof, isn't it? Whenever you're looking for a new company, a new supplier, or a new product, you want to know who else has used it before and what they thought of it as well. So gaining that social proof. So we're going to get down to nitty gritty now, Dean. We need some practical, implementable, if that's a word, steps that we need to take to transition from delivering all of our training face-to-face to delivering it via a fully online or a blended framework. So I did a chat with Arlo, as Craig did recently as well, about transitioning to blended learning and trying to make some practical steps, some tips on taking your content from face-to-face to online. But for a lot of people, if it's the first time they've been thrust into it, or perhaps they're realizing that, well, my budget's been cut for delivering training. I need to make a transition to blended because of COVID. Now we've got some remote workers, but even if they're coming back face-to-face, my training budget's been cut. So what are some practical steps people can take if this is the first time that they're coming across having to deliver training online?
Yeah, I guess that's the question that a lot of people are asking at the moment. Certainly, they're asking of us as well. I think it's one of the first things to consider is your overarching strategy. I mean, we've had a lot of customers come to us and they've gone, "Quick, we need a learning management system," and we've gone, "Why?" And they've gone, "Because we need to get our stuff online." I've gone like, "Hey, well, what sort of stuff have you got?" And a lot of the time they've started with nothing. So I think it's really important to start with something. I mean, what we did very early on in COVID is develop the remote working toolbox, for example, which is just a collection of 9 courses that people can have on their LMS from day one. And it's everything from how to work at home effectively to setting up your workstation to making hand sanitizer to all these new things that people might not be aware of. And they were well received. People downloaded those. installed. They're on their learning management systems. People get them by default, I think, these days with the LMS. Hope I got that right, Liam. So first of all, think about it. I mean, Craig touched on something there before about, what we'll do post this. That's to get back to the classroom. Excellent, great, love it. Got to happen. We need to have that blended learning approach. I think, though, a lot of organisations now will have a learning management system as part of their business continuity plan. They say nothing like this has happened for 100 years. Hopefully it doesn't happen for 100 more. But just in case it does, we have a learning management system with complementary materials. So if people can't travel, or if we are working remotely, or if our customers can't get to us, we have those options available to us. It's not going to be disruptive anymore. It's going to be as simple as turning on a light switch to move it across. People are obviously going to have expanded skill sets as well too. So most of our facilitators that we speak to out there, many of them hadn't really run webinars before, or weren't familiar with Zoom tools, or installing or setting up a plugin or whatever it might be to actually get the sessions online. So making sure that people have those basic skill sets, and it's certainly something that we now put a lot of focus on when we're speaking to organisations and onboarding those organisations, to make sure that they can now think remotely versus this just being another system in the organisation that they muck around with and go to it when they need it. Obviously, making sure there's a big focus too on utilisation. So there's so many things that the LMS can do that people were almost oblivious to. There's so many features and bits and pieces in there. So we've seen the calls in our help desk, for example, escalate dramatically, as people are now sort of spending more time in there and going, hey, I found this thing. Can you spend some time with me and tell me how it works? So that's great. The more utilization you can get out of a system, the more obviously value it has to your organization. So it's really good to be sort of seeing a lot more of that as well. But yeah, look, I think people need to consider their redundant strategies. So what happens if the lights go out? Where do they go? They need to consider their content strategy. What type of content do we want on there? Do we want e-learning courses? Do we want webinars? Do we want surveys, polls, questionnaires, quizzes? Do we want a blend of all of these things? It's really important when you're engaging a remote audience to start simple. And simple is really hard. Simple is really hard to make. If you charge anyone with writing a piece of software or building a house, and you say to them, I want a simple platform, that's hard. It's easy to make complex. It really, really is. You just throw lots and lots of features at people. So one of the pieces of advice that I'd give to any organisation implementing online learning is to start really simple. Start with just your e-learning courses, then introduce your webinars, then introduce your wikis, then introduce your blogs, and take that slow and steady approach versus A, scaring off all of your staff, and then B, scaring your user community as well, who come in and just overwhelmed with all these options and features and the like. It's like when you first got your iPhone. You started with a couple of apps, then you got really excited and got all these different apps, and then you were jumping from apps, and then you eventually figured out what was useful and deleted those apps from your regulars. Now you've got your go-to apps, and you've got a couple of games, a couple of productivity bits, and all the rest, and it makes it its own little community on your phone, so to speak. So it's the same sort of thing when you're rolling out an LMS or any other piece of functionality as well too, is first of all focus on those things that will be most useful to your organization, and then plug in and add on down the track. It's part of the rollout or the roadmap, if you like, for your own organization.
So Craig, when you were focusing on the things that were most important for your audience, how did you go about what are the practical things that you did to implement blended learning? I know you mentioned obviously a lot of virtual classrooms, but let's go another layer deeper than that. What are some of the details that you put in there to try and make your product better?
Yeah, and I think I'd probably just sort of want to take a lead from what Dean just mentioned about simple versus complex. I think that is a challenge for us always. We always want to make really accessible learning experiences that I think we're all working with often time poor people. I mean, for us, we're working with educators who might have 10 minutes at the end of the day before they've got to get in the car and go and get the groceries or whatever, that they think, I'll try and get something done, and they've heard about a module or they've heard about something. So we want to make the entry point really simple, just as we do for families who, you know, they're sitting down at 8:30 at night and the family's all in bed and they've got a TV show on and they just think, I want to do something to learn something a bit more about my child, about school, and we don't want to have 100 options for them to have to look through. We don't want to have them searching through lists of things. The big step for us, like the first thing that we really focused on, was actually on the communications side of things. That we had a real refocus on the way that we used our social media, the way that we used our email, reminders about things that we had coming up, because we wanted to get a really simple, clear message to people that yes, you know, our face-to-face workshops are not happening at the moment. You won't see those advertised through different channels, but here's what we're going to do. And we were very clear in saying, we are going to run webinars each week. Here's where you'll find them. Here's the upcoming list of the next 2 months worth of topics. Have a look through them, see what you think is going to suit you, and here's how to register. You know, or here's the front page of our learn book, learning management system. Here's our 6 most relevant modules that we think you're really going to love. You know, and keeping it really simple and the communication consistent. If people ask questions, I mean, we never used to have a frequently asked questions page on our learn book, a platform, but because of the increasing traffic come increasing questions. You know, how do I do this? Can I also do this? So we developed, you know, frequently asked questions for all the things that were coming through, which again just spoke to that level of simple communication to get people to feel very comfortable, you know, at being able to access things within the small pockets of time that they have. And I think we got better at doing that over time. It wasn't something that we, by any stretch, mastered. There was one day there, I think I had 2 phones, one against each ear, you know, different calls coming through and emails, and I felt like I was in a cartoon, and I just thought, this is so hectic, because there was such a need, but also, you know, people were unsure about exactly what to do. But we did quickly get better at that, and that's one of the lessons going forward about how we communicate the sort of choices, the sort of options to people, to make sure they're comfortable knowing how to get what they want.
That FAQ and the clear communication, that's a really good implementable step that you can take. And it's just investing that time up front. When you get that question, okay, I'm going to create a resource so that everyone can benefit. I'm going to save myself time down the track, because I'm not going to be repeating myself and answering this question as well. And when it comes to putting the content on to the LMS, I think when I chat to folks that are creating e-learning for the first time, or trying to create this blended learning strategy, there's 2 sayings that come to mind. There's that great is the enemy of good. Do something and get it onto the platform. You know, do something, get feedback on it, and then improve it. And then, you know, a good plan implemented now is better than a great or a perfect plan implemented in 2 weeks' time. Just get something going. It's not going to be perfect the first time. Someone will always have criticism or feedback on it, but just start and start getting it onto your system. Business goes on, and you may have some staff leave, and may be growing and have some staff join, and that's been a fortunate position that we've been in, Dean, when during this time we've expanded our team. So what are some of your tips or ideas around onboarding staff remotely and making them feel part of this culture and part of this team when they haven't moved very far from their bedroom?
It's very, very tough, I've got to say. That's something I don't have the complete rule book for, but what we're doing at the moment seems to be working okay. Look, it is going to become the norm. I mean, let's face it, this is foreign to many organisations now, but for many others have been doing it quite successfully for quite some time. I mean, even when you look at things like the gig economy, for example, I mean, if you're an Uber driver, you never meet Uber. It's you photocopy your license, you upload that, and there you go. You get a job and you're on the payroll. I think to a large extent, a lot of people are sort of working like that. There is obviously that cultural piece, but Uber themselves have a learning management system. They have people you can call for various types of assistance, as but most large multinationals have. I think in a smaller company, I say smaller, sort of under 100 people, you can still have that very personal touch. You can have the materials sent out. You can have the meet your manager and be introduced to the rest of your team members. Even some of the tools that we're having, like Zoom, for example, with its breakout rooms, works really, really well. I mean, Craig had mentioned playing trivia the other night with his crew. And we played the other night with our crew as well. And you could break out your little teams into your various breakout rooms, and the technology works really well. It's good. It's really good. If you haven't done it, try it. It's great. Having that personal touch, having your story told is a really important part of it too. So hearing from people in the organisation who tell you why you're there and why your organisation's there, the role it plays, and making sure that message is really, really clear. And then obviously the other sides of it as well too, having those informal joke around bits and pieces too, where you can get together. We tried the Friday night beers things. It was okay. Feels very unnatural sitting in front of a computer doing this. But there's other things as well too. So even on our morning chats, I mean, we've always got Hangouts or something similar going in our browsers, and people jump on and just say good morning. Good morning. I think today we had dad jokes. A few jokes to share with the team as well, just to sort of get you in the mood and get you fired up and go, okay, well, let's do some work now and get on with it. But you've got to give people obviously that opportunity to introduce themselves, to let them hear about you, the forum to ask questions again as well. So again, they can do that via our Learnable platform, our own internal platform, where they can ask those types of questions and get answers. Access to those resources they need, making sure they've got the equipment they need. And then another thing that we did, as you know, Liam, at the start of all this was, made sure that people have the right resources set up at their home offices. So if they needed printers or paper or chairs or whatever it might be, everyone was looked after, or had the facility to be able to ask the questions to be looked after there as well too. So making sure they are there as much as they would be in the real offices, as much as you can. So making sure that process doesn't break, but again, adapting it to suit that non-face-to-face world.
I like the idea of people being able to share their stories, because that's what you do when you started a new job, isn't it? Your manager takes you out for a coffee and you talk about your home life, and when you're in a video conference, things seem a lot more formal, a lot more structured, but to treat it the same way is important. And Craig, have you found that you've been able to learn more about your colleagues' stories, or have you had anyone new start and where you've been able to come closer together as a team?
Yeah, we definitely had people start at the start of this year who fully expected to be working in a regular office environment. In Sydney, we've got an office there that we, people came on at the start of the year and all looked like it was just going to be a regular new job for them, so you do the regular new job things, and then that changed very, very fast. So we have made sure to maintain the sorts of supports that we'd otherwise have for new staff coming in. So have them buddied up with someone who's their touch base. It's not their supervisor, it's just someone else on the team who's a colleague, who if they've got questions, that they know they can always reach out and just have that touch base, you know, and I think you get, like, we've also got the regular touch base with you know, supervisors and such, but in very, very casual, very friendly ways, you know, ways that you know, you don't start a meeting where we're just leading into the agenda. You know, we're always having just having a chat about what's going on, and you know, often what's going on in the background. We'll turn off our virtual backgrounds and see there's a dog running through a dog running through the lounge room, you know, or there's something going on in the backyard, and I think it's nice to remind each other that those are the sorts of things you'd otherwise do in the office. You know, you just catch up and have a bit of a laugh and a chat. So it's not always about going through agendas. But yeah, certainly for us, making sure our new team were connected to others that they could just, you know, ask things, have all the right resources, learn how to use those resources, and just regular little touch bases across the week where they feel connected to the bigger team.
Great.
Yeah, there's some great tips for connecting with each other, and I like the idea of turning off the virtual background, doing a little tour of your house after you've tidied up, to share a little bit about yourself as well. We're running short on time, but one thing I did want to ask about, Dean, is that obviously there's unemployment's going up, and people have taken renewed interest in making, if they are still working, to making themselves a better skilled employee, to make themselves more attractive to keep around as an employee. So what are some of your current thoughts on how we can support people, or to increase employment or employability, how people can increase their skills, and the importance of focusing on that today?
Yeah, look, it's one of those things I'm doing a lot of thinking on, as you know, Liam, at the moment, and even on myself. I mean, it's certainly my plan to come out of this better than I came in. You know, I think in a lot of these things, you know, a lot of people are going through a hell of a hard time, organisations, individuals, everybody. But in saying that, I think many people are lucky that they do have a little bit of time on their side, and a little bit of time perhaps than they normally would, whether it be made up by not sitting on public transport, or you know, not commuting to and from work. Use that time wisely. I mean, in my own life, I've done two things I'm really proud of recently. I finished an online course myself in Scrum, which was great. It was really enjoyable. I've been meaning to do it for years, haven't got the chance. The second thing I did was I built a beautiful big piece of screening for my back barbecue area. Now, I never ever thought in my wildest dreams that I'd be able to actually pick up a hammer and drill and all this sort of stuff and actually do that. But I did. And it turned out really well, and I found it really, really rewarding. So, you know, I think, you know, now is the best time, you know, while the car's off the track, so to speak, to really work on it. I mean, you know, we spend so much time working in our careers and working on each other in the office, working in our customers, our products and those sorts of things too. So, you know, take time to do that. I mean, one of the new features that we're sort of introducing to LearnBook is the skills matrix. So you can have an idea of where you are now and where you want to be, and what pieces of education fill those gaps to get you there. So we're doing some work with government agencies and those sorts of things about looking at the skills gaps. A good place to start if you want to have a look at skills matrices and those sorts of things is go to skills.gov.au. So they've actually got a matrix there where it says, right, I am a carpenter, I want to be a fitter and turner. These are the things that I need to do, the courses and the providers that can help me with that transition straight away. So we're providing access to those types of tools through our platforms in upcoming features, through a new feature we've got coming out very soon called the Learner Backpack, where you'll be able to do just that. So yeah, absolutely looking at those little gaps that you can fill in your own life and working life to sort of get to that place where you want to be. I think, yeah, everybody has a great opportunity here sharpen up a little and come out better. I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely, and making sure it's something that that's fun as well.
Yeah.
You're going to learn more when you enjoy it.
You're going to use our tagline, "Love the way you learn." There it is.
Nice work. Craig, have you noticed or have you taken the time to upskill yourself, or had colleagues do the same?
Yeah, I think it's been like a twofold thing where, on the one hand, it is a time to reflect on your own strengths and interests. I think we've always got a real strengths and interest focus, not only on our team. I mean, it's what we preach with our kids at school. You know, you think about what you can do well and how do you maximize that, and there might be ways to further extend upon that, and to focus on what you're interested in as well. What are you passionate about? What maybe gives you a real quality of life that you haven't taken the time to think about and focus on? And is that something that you can incorporate into skill acquisition, and what comes next? I think there's that side of it. And there's also the side of it where, I think for years, and it's not a I told you so moment, but I mean, for years, there's been those of us working in education and tech, and you've sort of seen the need to be confident with some of these tools, and some, some schools, for example, that I've worked with, sometimes I've thought, well, we don't need to do it yet. We're still not quite there yet. We don't need to be working in virtual ways or doing this and that. And I think the time has come where the hand has been forced a bit, to actually learn how to run a webinar, to learn how to make online learning resources. And it might not have been part of the roadmap last year, but it's definitely part of the roadmap now. And if that skill set is not quite there, I think that's fine. There's nothing to be ashamed of it, but now is the time to actually invest in getting confident with that and familiar, learning the skills of presentation in these sorts of formats as well, because this is the stuff that is really valuable, and is going to continue to be valuable going forward.
I agree. Yeah.
And this is somewhere where I'll really advocate for my friends who are in learning and development, who some large organizations have decided that that's an area that doesn't need investment during this time, or can make people redundant. And I'm really passionate about it. I don't think that's where you need to be cutting back right now. You need to be doubling down on getting better at what your primary objective is. Your primary objective is selling widgets, training people in this. Your number 2 priority is getting better at that. And I would advocate that we need to be investing in training really heavily now, and getting better, not only personally, but as organizations as well. Dean and Craig, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Some great insights. If you are a teacher or a parent and want to know more about helping your kids with autism, go to Positive Partnerships, check them out. If we haven't gotten to all your questions today, please shoot us an email to edtech@ecreators.com.au. We're here to help, even if you just need some ideas. But until next time, this is Liam from eCreators saying thanks very much.
Thanks, Liam.